Welcome everyone, welcome everyone, welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a Wednesday, so it's time, as it is every Wednesday, for our weekly Top 10 countdown. And this week's Top 10 countdown is another request. I try to do all the requests that I get for the Top 10 countdowns. This one, I believe, is from my man Eric. I'm pretty sure it was him, and I originally told him that I would just wait until football season because it would make more sense that way. That way, even during the week, we could have a Top 10 countdown that was based on college football. But I thought, you know what, college football is less than 2 months away, so just about anybody and everybody who enjoys college football in any way, shape, or form is counting down the days until your team's first game of the season. So I thought we'd go ahead and do this week's Top 10 countdown, which is going to be Top 10 all-time biggest college football blowout games. And that's why I'm wearing my Clemson attire, because this video is about college football. Now, of course, it doesn't have Clemson anywhere on the list, but I figured since we're talking college football, I would wear my Clemson gear. So it's 10 through 1, and of course, obviously, the number one biggest all-time blowout is going to be the one that's the highest margin of victory. So 10 will be the smallest of the 10, and of course 1 will be the biggest of the 10. So as we go through the countdown, the margin of victory in each game will get a little bigger and a little bigger. I will not waste all your time doing a long video by giving some kind of backstory on each and every game, except for the number one. Number one, I will give a small backstory to that one, just in case you have not heard the backstory on that game. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with this week's Top 10 countdown. Number 10 was a game that happened in 1997. South Florida beat Kentucky Wesleyan by 77 points. The final score was 80-3. Number 9 is probably the most recent game on this list, and it was 17 years ago, 2004. Georgia Southern beat Johnson C. Smith 84-3. So they won that game by 81 points. 1968 is where we'll find number 8 on our top 10 countdown of the 10 biggest all-time college football blowouts. 1968 is when the Houston Cougars beat the Tulsa Golden Hurricane 100-6. And 2003, Rockford beat Trinity Bible 105-0. 1889 is where we'll find number 6 on the list, and that was when Lehigh beat the Penn State Nittany Lions 106-0. Before we get into our top 5, we'll recap numbers 10 through 6. Number 10 was back in 1997. South Florida beat Kentucky Wesleyan 80-3. Number 9, Georgia Southern beat Johnson C. Smith 84-3. Number 8, Houston beat Tulsa 100-6. Number 7, Rockford beat Trinity Bible 105-0. And number 6, in 1889, Lehigh beat Penn State 106-0. And number 5 on the countdown happened back in 1890, and that's when Princeton beat Virginia 115-0. And in 1918, Georgia Tech beat the Wolfpack of NC State 128-0. Number 3 on the list happened 117 years ago, back in 1904. Michigan beat West Virginia 130 to nothing. Number 2 happened 105 years ago, back in 1916. Rice beat SMU 146 to 3. So that was 143 point differential. And number 1 on the list is a team I just mentioned back at number 4, and that was Georgia Tech. And they beat Cumberland 222 to nothing. Now, I think anybody that knows anything at all about college football, even if you're not a diehard fan, you know a little bit of the backstory about this game and behind this game. But just in case you don't or don't know the full story, I'll go ahead and try to give you the full story. This game happened so long ago that back in 1916, Georgia Tech was not the Yellow Jackets. They were actually called the Georgia Tech Engineers. And the team they played, as I just mentioned, was Cumberland. And Cumberland was a small school in Middle Tennessee. If you know anything at all about Middle Tennessee, up around Cookeville, Crossville, Jamestown, Sparta, that area in there is called the Upper Cumberland, and that's why Cumberland was called Cumberland. And their nickname was actually the Bulldogs. Now, the backstory behind this game was that John Heisman was the actual head football coach of Georgia Tech back in 1916, but he was also the head coach of the baseball team. Now, in 1916, Georgia Tech played Cumberland in baseball, and Cumberland won 22 to nothing. Now, if you know anything at all about baseball, you know that 22 runs in baseball is a lot. That's just something you just do not see that often. But there was a rumor that started going around that Cumberland was actually using professional baseball players and putting them in some Cumberland jerseys and playing Georgia Tech, and that was why they beat Georgia Tech so bad. Now, whether that's true or not, nobody knows because, it wasn't on TV and none of us were alive. But needless to say, John Heisman got his feelings hurt about it, and he was mad that his baseball team got beat 22 to nothing to Cumberland. So when it come football season, this game had already been agreed upon and had been talked about being played. Well, before the football season started, Cumberland actually shut down their football program. They didn't have one. But John Heisman, he pitched a fit and he pouted and he told them that they had to play Georgia Tech in football regardless of whether or not they had a football program. And if they didn't play Georgia Tech, that he was going to make Cumberland pay Georgia Tech $3,000 for not playing the game. Now, of course, back in 1916, $3,000 was a lot of money. So what Cumberland did was walk up and down the streets and just find random people and just asked random people, hey, do you want to play football? Hey, do you want to play football? We need you on the football team. So they just had enough players off the street to field a team, and they played Georgia Tech, and the final score was 222 to nothing. Now, that full story may not be true, but I believe it because I've heard it for many, 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 many years. But not only that, I've actually found websites that have the box score of the Georgia Tech and Cumberland game. And there was some possessions where Cumberland would just get the ball and punt on first down because they knew they were either going to throw a pick or they were going to fumble. So they would just get the ball and punt. And then if you look at Georgia Tech's drives, they'd have one play, touchdown, one play, touchdown. And then if Cumberland did run a play, it was, in fact, either a fumble or interception. So Cumberland looked absolutely pitiful. So the only way for me to believe that a team scored 222 points in football was because the team they played was not a football team. There was also a rumor that John Heisman intentionally tried to get to 200 and 22 points, because 222 in football, to him, he thought was the equivalent of 22 in baseball. So 22 to nothing in baseball is a pretty big blowout. So he wanted to have the equivalent of that in football, so he put up 222 points. There's also another rumor that John Heisman put up that many points on purpose, because if you follow football, you know there was no national championship games back then. People voted on who they thought was the best team. And a lot of times, people didn't watch every game or every team. They would just look at the box score or look at the overall score. And if one team just blew another team out of the water, they would vote for that team just because they beat somebody by a certain amount of points. So if anybody didn't watch that game and didn't know the backstory of that game, and you see a team puts up 222 points, then you're going to say, they're the best team in the country, when in reality, they probably weren't. But that is the backstory on the number one all-time biggest college football blowout, when Georgia Tech beat Cumberland 222 to nothing. And if memory serves, the game was played October the 7th of 1916. And as I said, the game was so long ago, Georgia Tech was not the Yellow Jackets. They were still called the Georgia Tech Engineers. That's how long ago that game was. Now, of course, none of these scores on this list we'll see this day and time, because nowadays coaches complain if their team gets beat by 50 points. They'll accuse the other team of running up the score, which I have never understood and I still don't understand. Even as a Clemson fan, back when Tommy Bowden was there, if Clemson got destroyed, they just got destroyed. I never walked away and thought, man, they ran the score up on us. I mean, what is the other team supposed to do? Just snap the ball and down it and take a knee every drive? I've never understood how coaches can get mad thinking the other team runs a score up. But since everybody this day and time is so soft, we'll never see a blowout like anything on this list. Now, if you want to, you can get on Google and find backstories on just about all these games, and a lot of them are just fun to read about, like Lehigh beating Penn State 106 to nothing. And I don't even think Lehigh has a football team that's any relevance at all this day and time. And then, of course, you have Princeton beating Virginia by 115 points. And Princeton hasn't had a football program in God knows how long. So a lot of these are just fun to read about, because it's a lot of teams that you've never heard of or didn't even know had a football team. But those are the 10 all-time biggest blowouts in college football history, and that's compliments of my man Eric, who requested that I do that, because he is a college football fan, as most everybody is in some way, shape, or form. We'll go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. How do you organize a space party? You plan it. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.